But now that segment of just South African worship, which I think you do have to do.
You have to do it, because they deserve it.
Just given what happened in this tournament and how good they were, I think you have to do that. But we are going to just take a more close look at the final itself.
32-12. Obviously, South Africa with the 32, England with the 12. Unlucky to our England subs, but they can have no complaints. They were absolutely outplayed from minute one. There were a few gripes, like the Sinclair incident was unfortunate. Especially we had flagged even pre-tournament pre-game how much the scrum would be an interesting battle, and with Sinclair being as combative as he is, it's a shame that he didn't get to scrum down with that awesome pack. But from then on, when Dan Cole came in, as we were alluding to before, it really did set a tone for the game, and that set piece until I think the 50th minute, when Marler came on and actually made a bit of a difference to one of the scrums, but every other scrum was a South African dominance, and I think it yielded like 5 or 6 penalties for them. It was really a massive factor in the game, and it's unfortunate that it was just a kind of a random accident that took Sinclair out of the game.
It was definitely unfortunate. I don't know what would have happened if Sinclair had to face up against the Beast.
That's why we missed out on that.
We did miss out on that. I suspect the Beast would have won.
So too.
The Beast is great, and the job he did on Dan Cole, as much of a mug as he made Dan Cole look, like, Dan Cole isn't that bad.
No,
like, he presumably is trying to scrum down and to the right and hold his body together, and like he just ends up turned in on the engage virtually every time. It was really soft, to be honest with him. And then him complaining to the ref, and it's like, you have to do the job yourself. You can't go looking for these driving in. Like, every loose head is trying to drive in, and every tight head is trying to drive down and out. But you can't just go whinging to the ref. You have to fix it. You can't just start presenting this shape of you buckling.
The picture was horrendous all game long.
But he couldn't cope. He couldn't cope with the Beast's pressure and the pressure that was coming behind from the box scrum.
But conversely, like the English may complain about that, but the difference is, like, as you were saying, when Daragh went down, I think shortly thereafter, it was around 15 minutes in, he broke like a busted arm and he had to be taken off. But then in comes Mostert, and the standard does not there's no drop off there. It's just more of the same.
And that's the difference. And actually, if you want to look at big picture concepts for a moment before we get into the nitty gritty of the game, we had to put aside our flagging of the English squad. Pre-tournament, because they sort of became undeniable, the guys who were picked. They were playing just this beautiful Saracens-esque, delightful, sophisticated offensive rugby. They were managing their way around the pitch so well.
They were schooling the All Blacks.
They were schooling the All Blacks, indeed. But they made mistakes in their squad selection that the Springboks didn't make.
That's the difference.
Like, they have as much talent.
Exactly.
They're one of
the only other sides. You could maybe say France in theory, but no.
New Zealand are the other argument.
Well, but in terms of a player population and the amount of quality pros they have, England have a similar dilemma to South Africa, where it's like, oh Jesus, like, it's not that we're scrambling to get 31 together. It's actually, which 31 do you pick? And that's the head scratcher for them. And as much as we were just singing Razzie's praises for getting that 100% right, couldn't cite
more right.
Even though there are people left out, like your man up in Ulster, Marcel Coetzee, who on any other team, in any other nation, he's walking in there, but he's omitted rightly because he like on merit. Whereas with England, you felt there were one or two, like Cipriani, obviously Ford kind of quieted that because he had a really good tournament. But the Cipriani was Premiership Player of the Year and was left out. The big one is good.
Alex Good at fullback. I mean, Elliot Daly and George Ford both found themselves put under more pressure than they'd been put under the whole tournament, and they both looked at that as looked a little weaker because of it. And maybe upon reflection, Farrell's the guy you want in the 10 shirt if you're going to be put under that amount of pressure, because he's one of the few 10s in the world who can execute under that kind of pressure. And Alex Good is more solid than Elliot Daly ultimately, and Elliot Daly was making poor knock-ons. And he was just being given less time than he had been the whole tournament. One of the big narratives for me is Harry Williams, big Exeter man, and I tell you, those Exeter boys, say what you want about them, they can scrum.
They scrummage. That's what they built there.
Luke Cowan-Dickie came on for Jamie George and improved the scrum. Like, they just get it. And Harry Williams is a proper big unit. He is just a much more difficult man to shift than Dan Cole. And yet they went for Dan Cole. People flagged it at the time, and then they started winning games, and everybody forgot about it. They were made to pay, frankly, in my opinion, for doing that, for picking.
Another good point that I think it was actually Squidge making was Ben Young's, but with them naming their squad as early as they did, because remember Eddie Jones did name it weeks out. That meant that he was picking 2 scrummies.
Yeah.
And once Hines got injured, which he did, Spencer came out, but he hasn't been with the squad for weeks, a month.
No, I thought it was the start of June.
Yeah. And he's also only had around like 20 odd test minutes anyway. He should have been there in my opinion.
He's a great talent.
Another form choice that you would have got in based on this year, but he hadn't been with the squad. So then, even though he's on the bench for the final, is he really an option?
Yeah,
seemingly not, because Ben Youngs was having a shocker. And was just not being hauled out of there because he seemingly had no other option, which is a problem. Like, you need your squad, and you certainly need your bench to be there to contribute and be able to contribute. And if you didn't have that faith in Spencer, that's another issue you could cite in terms of the squad management.
But to go back to the game itself and sort of compare and contrast what England did so right against Australia and New Zealand that they couldn't quite do against the Springboks. And while they do have this glorious attacking shape that we so rarely got to see against the Springboks, where it all came from was them exercising control over where and how the game was played. They were off restarts against both Australia and New Zealand, just torturing their opposition, pinging them back deep and not letting them exit, and then setting up a line out and or some form of attacking set piece from which to launch a pre-planned set of moves. They so rarely, if ever, got to paint that picture.
Not really at all.
And they kind of got beaten. The 3 set pieces, the restart was the real shocker. I mean, you had flagged the one thing that the Razzie's done as well with these Springboks. They used to be a little loose off the restart. They were so sharp off the restart today.
There was their best showing. They actually turned it into a dominant set piece, as well as fielding, because I think they initially England deviated from their strategy to target Villy LaRue, which is, like, on paper probably a good shout, but when it didn't work once or twice, considering how well it had been going for them in those games, you question the rationale behind mixing that up.
Farrell's kicking, frankly, wasn't as accurate. But yes, he was chipping the ball down to Villy LaRue down the centre of the pitch, where what he had been doing was pinging the corners, pinning the team back and forcing them to exit. But then the other thing that happened was that they just, at line out, it was scrappy. Like, the Boks had a better line out. They were putting them under pressure.
Boks had the best line out in the tournament.
They had the best line out in the tournament. And then at scrum time, England were tortured. They had so they completely unravelled because they couldn't control where the game was playing, and then they couldn't launch off set piece,
and they also couldn't dominate collision zones quite as readily as they were against both Boks and Wallabies, or no, by both All Blacks and Wallabies. Because they were coming up against a team that didn't mind defending them. Certainly when they had their way with them at set piece, and like South Africa are just game for that collision based.
It was something that you had flagged almost before half time. You were like more sure than I was that the Boks were going to win, where pre-game I had called the Boks and you had called England. But it was the picture that was developing was just the ease with which the All Blacks were exiting. They weren't being pinned back by the English, because once they had the Boks, the ease with which they were exiting, because they were just rampaging through some collisions and then getting out of their own territory, and England just weren't able to pin them back. And it was not something that England had been presented with for the whole tournament. I mean, they looked very, very good under the specific set of circumstances that they had arranged. And when they were unable to arrange them, everything got a bit more loose. And then the next thing that happened was that the Springbok awesome defence every time England had the ball was just torturing them. I mean, there was breakdown pressure, but there were just strong collisions. Somebody on Twitter, I wish I could remember who, but I can't, had flagged, had a great little sequence of pictures, and if you watch the game back you can see it, and it's essentially every George Ford touch in the first half, and it's Peter Steph du Toit in his face,
about as far away as I am.
He was tracking him across the pitch, exactly, and hitting him sometimes late, sometimes when he's on the ball, sometimes just staring down at him after he released it. And George Ford has been great the whole tournament, but he's been given a great platform, given the right areas of the pitch, being presented with a great shape outside him, and knowing how to execute within that. But everything's a bit more ragged. They're not where they want to be. They're trying to get something going. Their forwards are going backwards, and all of a sudden he has a Peter Steph du Toit in his face, and things just get a bit more loose.
Exactly.
That's the pressure that the Boks imposed on them, and it just completely unravelled.
Well, England have shown signs, and it's funny that it was Wales who revealed it earlier in the year. That that alarm bell, that little caveat to attach to English optimism, was just that, like, when wily defensive teams and physical defensive teams stand up to us and knock us off our rhythm, slow our breakdown ball up a little, that wonderful attacking shape suddenly does not ceases to be potent at all, and they really do struggle to find themselves to kind of generate that momentum for themselves outside of that. And you saw, like, even little micro plays like Faf shooting up out of line, to get in the passing lane that of Ben Young's,
that was great.
causing him to flounder and throw it over his head into touch.
You got loads of those, but they just never were able to settle. The very I believe Squidge Rugby flagged the exact moment that they first got into the Springbok half was about 10 minutes in.
Yeah, which is a team that like to start quickly, as we've seen all year.
And the Boks being a team that understood what England were about, and I think we'd said this in our preview as well, is that just getting the game to be on a relative parity at around half time and going into those killer minutes, they would fancy with their bench their ability to pull away anyway, even if things hadn't gone quite so dominant as they needed to. So in that opening period, the Boks were not thinking about their attack very much at all. They were thinking about getting the ball, slowing it down almost in that Irish-esque way, and just being awkward and controlling where the game is played and not allowing their opposition to settle and to get into the game. And when England do love to get that rhythm going, it was a frustrating picture, and you saw on a number of occasions Faf slowing everything right up, getting his forward pod in there and just trucking it up, and then the other thing that I just want to flag is how good Evan Etzebeth is.
He does not go backwards.
I think the man is
incredible. We got an answer to the question when Itoje hits Etzebeth. Itoje goes backwards for the only time you'll see all tournament.
No, I think Itoje is great, and
he made some play. He made one play that I remember where it was a big turn. Like, he was still in there for the fight, but it was just the English they're kind of a team of bullies, which is it's not an insult, it's not even a shock or revelatory. They like to play that bullying physical side. They like to be the meanest, more dominant guys in the collision zone. And when they meet, that's why they have such a poor record against the Springboks, because it's always true that England want to play that way, and it's always true that the South Africans are game for it, and if not match it, they tend to excel.
There are so many great locks in the world right now, but Evan Etzebeth is the best in the world at doing the most important job that a lock has, which is those collisions, setting down that marker, getting your pack going forward. Like, Evan Etzebeth is the best in the world at that. Both sides of the ball. He is incredible. I don't know how he wins contact.
He's strong.
And he always has been since he was a very young man. He's been freaky strong, and now he's matured. He knows where to run. He knows what to do, and he knows what the important moments are.
He even knows when to throw a little round the back
pass to Damien Delindi to
rampage up the wing, and another exit, another
dance down the touchline. That was a huge moment as well. But it had that feeling of inevitability from very early on, where the Boks were just getting on top, and they just looked a better pack.
They did.
And I thought Tom Curry kind of vanished into the occasion.
He shrank a little. Underhill didn't. Underhill stepped up and tried his darndest, but it was not enough. And also, in a battle of the eights, I think I'd said pre-tournament that Vunipola was getting the 8th jersey in my World 15, but big Dwayne Vermeulen. What a wonderful tournament he had. I kind of love. He is a champion, and he's also. I love that himself and Khaleesi have like a wonderful little kind of headstrong partnership as far as just leadership in the pack goes. Because Peter Steff's off doing a boatload of work all the time for all tournament anyway, so you just let him go. He's chasing forward, down, and whatever. But the two boys do have it's good to see them in conference a lot of the time in huddles, and they are. And it's just it introduces a sense of calm. But Dwayne Vermeulen is just an all-round number 8. He is possibly the best number 8 of all time based on this showing in this World Cup. I don't know if you could cite like Dwayne Vermeulen in 2019 World Cup vintage. Is there a better number 8 that we've seen?
Zinzan Brook.
Zinzan Brook is up there. Kieran Reid from 2015 is a great player too. But like that combination of sheer physicality in the contact zone, like that Evan Etzebeth thing, like not going backwards. But couple that with he's actually throwing passes off his left, skip passes, picking the right moments, putting players into space.
Probably can't kick a drop goal from 40 metres.
I'm not sure if he can kick a drop goal from 40 metres, no. But and getting his offloading game going as well. Like, they really did show up, Billy V. They showed up. They basically arrived to match and exceed England. Well,
you watching Billy Vunipola through the course of the game very much paints the picture of what happened to England, and it's so damn unfamiliar for them, and it was that chaos factor that we really didn't know when you have these two best packs meeting. But Billy Vunipola going backwards in a few contacts, getting rocked, starting to limp, and by the end of the game strapped in this mad head-eye thing and just sort of like hobbling away as Cheslin Colby danced around him going ugh. And I mean, jeez, to wear that guy down to that extent, that's the kind of thing he likes to do to his opponents, and that's the telltale sign, and that's what this Springbok pack did. Too big, too strong, too wily, too good, and it all came from the set piece. But that said, before we round up the segment, got to give a shout out to those backs.
Oh man,
because Damien Delindy
and Nathaniel Am's break at the end of the first half, that was the first little bit of open expansive rugby, and it was another exit out of the half and straight up to the other side. But it was just,
there was a little link play where in the first half Delindy gave it to Am, and it was the most exciting bit of footy. Am did a little chip over the top, and then Elliot Daly under pressure spilled it, and it was another big picture of the narrative of the day. Momentum gain for the Boks, and let's scrum. And it was just, these things were compounding. But I thought Am was leading the defensive line really well, and I actually thought that the two wingers really came into their own defensively. They both made
both
huge
of them had
plays.
huge little moments on defense, and then also they had their great, like the Springbok picture is a fundamentals smash game, but we've cited this before. It's the wingers, after all that grunt and hard work is done, it's the wingers on the edges who are lethal, and that was the same in the 07 iteration.
Brian Abana and JP Peterson, exact
two
same principle.
Lethal guys on either side who can finish all that hard work off, and that's exactly the picture they got to paint in the final. It was a total Springbok performance, capped off by two worldy of tries on either side of the pitch. And also credit to Nathaniel Am, the least, so unselfish. He could have got over himself.
A lot of people saying that. Like, I definitely didn't think he was 90% going to get there. Like, I watched it back again. He got it on the 5, and there's like an Elliot guy right there. Yeah.
So he made a judgment call. And it's the unselfish, correct call.
I'm not sure if I've mentioned it on the podcast before, but for a while I have been calling him, like, he's my favourite player in the game, hands down. Yeah. And I've been calling him Calm Am for a while.
He's very calm.
He's just the most calm man in existence. It doesn't matter what the occasion is or what the instance is. The man is just so chill and so relaxed, and I love a guy who is completely chill and completely relaxed and
vicious
then
at the same time.
And then out of nowhere he's just gonna launch himself into you. His defensive reading is on another level, and then to have a guy who can read like that and tackle like he can tackle, and then to see him pull off some sexy offensive plays, it's just a joy. The man is a joy. He has been the best 13 in the world for about a year now, and I'm so glad he's getting his credit, because he so deserves it.
Definitely true. I thought Villy stepped up as well. I thought his boot was useful on exit.
He took those restarts.
He took those restarts. He didn't really put a foot wrong. It was the big occasion, and he knew he needed to perform, and he did. And credit to him, because there were people calling for his jersey all tournament long, ourselves kind of included. We were spitballing on the ideas of
Chesney on a fullback,
that kind of idea, but it ended up being just right and proper.
Razzie's way works.
It does
in the end.
And it just both of those tries were worldies. Cheslin,
Malcolm Marks off the bench.
And
sexy
huge
little
impact, several turnovers. He was actually hard done by, because he had maybe 4 more turnovers that were just generously not pinned, in terms of generously to England, because he was getting in on the breakdown, slowing ball up, disrupting, and then it was kind of fair and justified that it was him with a big hit on an out of form Slade to create that turnover that led to
another little subtle excellent Lucanio Am off the ball play as well. Just as soon as that ball spilled, there was a chaos element to it. A lesser man would dive on the ball or try and scoop it up, and Am just put his body between the scrambling Englishman and the ball, and then popped it up. And that was just perfect to Peter Sefton. It was exactly what he should have done. The man understands the game on another level.
And
he just all those little subtle plays are so great. And then Cheslin Colby, I mean, he's a dream. The boy's a dream.
The footwork is crazy. And the bewildered, flailing Faz tackle, but you can't blame Faz, because he's been taking names like that all season long and beyond. He's a bit unstoppable. He's in the
pantheon of really the two great Bok winners now. Himself and Brian Abana are, I think, at their best, a class apart from anything else that has been produced in South Africa, and close to anything else that's been produced in the game. You'd only include Lomo and a couple of others. Campese at his very best in the conversation with those guys. I mean, two sensational players, and there's a lot of moaning that you didn't quite see enough of him in the whole tournament, but he was used appropriately, and he was used when it mattered, and he was used to put that final nail into the English coffin. And he does have a decent read on the game. He understood that essentially Farrell was the only defender he had to beat. There was chat about 3 players, but he was like, actually, I got the gas here from Marler and Friend, and I'm just going to go around them and then do Farrell. And easy
so he did.
And poor old Billy V could only watch as he ran around him, and
it was kind of inevitable, like watching as neutrals as we were, because you just have that, like, Cheslin space, and it's a try, and it normally is. It was rare that he got granted the space this tournament, because you were going to watch him the whole time, and they didn't quite get their offense at times, but I'm glad that the final ended with 2 tries, just to put that stamp on it, because as far as the performance went, it was about that dominant. 20 points was about fair.
Yeah, and it was one area that they had been struggling to do was reflect their dominance on the scoreboard, even in wins.
And in their one loss of the tournament and of the year against the All Blacks, where they lost by 10 points, they kind of didn't... Again, they had that 20-minute period at the start of the game where they just didn't convert. They only got registered 3 or 6 points, I think, for it. I can't remember. And then bang, bang, try from the All Blacks, which is still sort of their kryptonite, this team. This team are going to be game for dominating every other pack in the world in terms of that fundamentals rugby, but the All Blacks are a chaos factor where they can just strike.
I'm looking forward to seeing how that rivalry develops for sure. But I don't think that was the full box on that occasion. It was a pool stage game.
It was, and it can't be over.
Understanding tournament footy is a big thing.
100%.
Yeah, a lot of people.
They did their job from then on out. They were pretty flawless all the way to the final.
Listen, that defeat gave them a nice little run to the final. It did.
But it's also zooming back out for big picture again, as we did at the start of it before we move on from it. What it is a good argument for, we've said it with the squad that they got the most right, that Rassie got the most right, but also form. Form's important in a World Cup year, can't be understated. And this World Cup really did seem to go to form, and that kind of goes beyond South Africa. But you're looking like England, yes, they showed great form coming in. They also lost twice to Wales this year. Yeah. And drew against Scotland. Yeah. Which is that's dubious. The All Blacks were unimpressive against the Argentinians at the beginning of the year. They were stifling a little bit for form. They drew at home to the Springboks.
They got battered by the Wallabies.
That's not enough form to carry in. Wales as well, similarly, had a Grand Slam, obviously, but they did lose back-to-back to Ireland coming in, even though you don't really read into the warm-up games. But the only team that came in...
Wales came closest to beating the champs in the knockout stages.
And they were also the one with the few... if you're not counting the warm-up games, they're the ones with the same they're a form team coming in, whereas teams like ourselves, our beloved Ireland, like Australia, like France, you were kind of clinging to a hope that you'd find form, but not really basing it on what you've seen this year. And then Japan were a shock to everyone kind of getting through, but I was even flagging it pre-World Cup going Pool A, our pool, there's one champion team in here and it ain't us, it ain't Scotland. It's PNC champs Japan, and they topped the group. So there's a lot to be said for form that can be player to player, but also
who's
team.
Hot and who's not.
Who's hot and who's not. Yeah. And it influences selection, but it definitely teams form and momentum carries into this World Cup, and a lot is made of 4-year cycles. But I think what's more pertinent than the 4-year cycle, which is important in getting your prep and getting yourself right for World Cup year, but who's doing things in World Cup year is the big question, and that's what
4-year cycles are overstated, and really I think the idea of committing to one so heavily, I think, has been thoroughly undone by Rassie and this Spok team. Yeah. So if I think Eddie Jones's contract goes to 2021, I think maybe Andy Farrell's in Ireland goes to 2021. Yeah. I think that's how wiser look at it in 2-year cycles. There's the 2 years after the World Cup, and there's the Lions tour, a lot of hullabaloo around that.
Sure.
And then once that's over, then you're into your real getting ready for the World Cup mode. Mm-hmm. Now there are big picture things that you should always be doing, like squad development, like coaching at a grassroots level, guys to play with skill and flair and understand the game. All of that is important regardless all the time. Yeah, that's important in terms of a 20-year picture.
Exactly.
But in terms of actually getting a national side there, the 4-year cycle isn't as meaningful as people have made it out to be.
Exactly.
But to pivot back just on a wrap up, the final was so thoroughly won by England. It was one of my favourite games of the year, just to see that thoroughly won by England, thoroughly won by South Africa. It was one of my favourite games in the year. It was just a complete picture by, I think, my favourite team.
That's Springboks. Yeah, you were flagging them pre-tournament.
They were certainly my favourite team, and I think they have showed the world why.
Yeah,
awesome side.
And it was I can't add anything else. Deserved. The best team won.
Yeah,
go on Rassie, go on Khaleesi. Absolutely awesome. The Springboks are champions of the world, and that's going to remain true for the next 4 years.
Indeed. Yeah,
but well, I suppose we'll pivot on.
We will.
Thank you very much for watching that video. Please like and subscribe for all our new Rugby World Cup content, and please leave a comment down below as well, because we enjoy hearing your thoughts on it. Thanks.